A woman who lives in Texas. Texas state law HB 2 has led to the closure of more than 20 abortion facilities in the state, taking the total number of providers from 40 to 19. Its true purpose to take away women's rights to make their own health care decisions, and it couldn't be more blatant. Again, to take away every woman's rights, the right to choose. No one stands on this floor tonight to promote and coddle an abortion, but we do stand on the floor to protect a woman's right to choose her health and her sacred right of making such decisions with her God, her family, and her physicians. Where does HB 2 and other bills have the right to interfere with that? Let me also cite for you that a UN working group concluded that women in the United States inexplicably lag behind international human rights. Pointing to data and research on public and political representation and economic and social rights and health and safety protection, experts in the UN Working Group boldly acknowledge that there's a myth that women in the United States already enjoy all of the expected standards of rights and protections afforded under America. Isn't that shameful? Under America, we are still denied our rights. The reality is women in the United States are experiencing continued discrimination and daunting disparities that prevent the true ability for them to fully participate as equal members of society. We stand here this evening to acknowledge one striking issue that will be argued in the Supreme Court next week, and that is this case, HB 2, that has shut down clinics and denied to women no other access would be open to them with this particular legislation. And so we're advocating, as it goes to the Supreme Court, that this is an issue of human rights equals women's rights. We face a real problem in America of hypocrisy. Isn't it interesting that we say that we believe in the rights of family and the sacredness of one's religion and choice between their family, their doctor, and their God, but yet Danielle Deaver denied abortion even as a uterus crushed the fetus. This family wanted children. This family wanted to be able to have this child. But unfortunately, through medical reasons, this young lady needed to have this baby taken. For 22 weeks, she was in this condition, or she was 22 weeks pregnant. But the real crime is that this was not allowed to take place in a legal manner, because just 1 month earlier, Nebraska had enacted the nation's first fetal pain legislation banning abortions after 20 weeks. Not one that she wanted, not one that she desired, but because of health care and needs and the fact that a tragedy had happened to her and her family, but yet denied. Women's rights equal human rights. With respect to the Texas case, the Supreme Court is scheduled to hear this case, Whole Women's Health versus Hellerstedt, next Tuesday, challenging the Texas law that has stripped thousands of women of access to their constitutional right. Whole women's health care is the most consequential reproductive case in the last 2 decades, challenging the long-standing precedent upholding a woman's constitutional right to access to safe and legal abortion services. Not a supporting of abortion, but a supporting of the right to choose and protecting a woman's health and the life of the mother, and the fact that you engage with your family, your God, and your physician. Ever since the landmark Roe v. Wade decision that was affirmed again in 1992 in Planned Parenthood versus Casey, the U.S. Supreme Court has made clear that women have a constitutional right to safe legal abortion care and that states do not have a right to unduly interfere. The Casey decision explained these matters involving the most intimate and personal choices a person may make in a lifetime. Choices central to personal dignity and autonomy are central to the liberty protected by the 14th Amendment. The so-called experts who testified in favor of HB 2 have been discredited by multiple federal courts and exposed for submitting testimony written by an anti-abortion activist with no medical training. Texas HB 2 has led to the closure of more than 20 abortion facilities in the state, taking the total number of providers from 40 to 19. Mr. Speaker, as I close, let me give an additional personal anecdote that has taken place in the state of Texas. And that is, of course, the masquerading, going into the Planned Parenthood offices who have provided these clinics who have provided health care to rural communities and college students where there are no doctors, OBGYNs, and are no doctors, if you will, or facilities to handle the medical needs of these women. Remember when I said women's rights are human rights are women's rights, so said by then First Lady Hillary Rodham Clinton. It is true today. And as I showed you in document, the United Nations Working Group has challenged whether or not we have provided women the same rights in America as men. And that is a daunting question and an unfortunate answer because the UN Working Group has said no. And so in this backdrop of this great discussion and the Texas HB2, we had the circumstances of people falsifying who they were, stealing the ID of this person's high school classmate and imitating that they were looking for fetuses for research. And interestingly enough, all of those were calling for the indictment of the Planned Parenthood personnel, but an unbiased grand jury in Texas did not indict those innocent persons having a discussion about what was legal, but they indicted those who falsified their documents and tried to mislead people. Again, this case will be argued in the backdrop of so many trying to undermine women's rights. I will continue to work with my colleagues to find ways to address the illogical, unfair, and unjust disparity by reviewing and responding to unwarranted restrictions that result in the disparate access to these constitutionally protected rights. I hope one day that we will learn and have as our constitutional premise that the Constitution works and women's rights are human rights. With that, I yield back my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Congresswoman. I'd like now to yield time to the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Quigley.